Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Chris with Vertical Without Bedsores. Vertical Without Bedsores. It's a little damp up here, and in my condition, I have a little raspy voice, so I'm going to try to get through this quite quickly. This week, I submitted my manuscript to the publisher called Meet Me at the Italian Hall, which is a historical fiction of the Italian Hall disaster. And so I thought it'd be appropriate to come up and take a look at the top of the Calumet fireplace. These doors were in the Italian Hall at the time of the disaster. And these possibly, it's not for sure, but these possibly were the doors that the multitude of people came down and stampeded and ended up dying against. Most of them died by suffocation, a lot of them children. So some people refer to these as the original death doors. But as we walk around here, we'll see where they are doors that were in here's the dining room door in the Italian Hall. Here's the other side of the doors with the hardware on it. So if these are not the original doors that the people were impaled against, they most certainly were doors that witnessed the tragic event. Yeah, I had a video, I think, yesterday on James McNaughton. And here's a cardboard cutout of James McNaughton. Now, he was the CEO of Calumet and Hecla Mining Company. And it says, James McNaughton, the general manager of Calumet and Hecla Mining Company, is depicted in the attire he wore to his office. He was never without a handkerchief and stood 5 feet 11 in height. I remember a guy I knew years ago, he was 5'11", and he said, he read that Man's magazine that 5'11" is the ideal height to be. In the role of manager, he ensured that the profits went into the pockets of the investors and to upgrade the equipment so that the company became even more profitable for its investors. That is why he chose not to meet the demands of the strikers after they formed the first union in the state back in 1913. To him, it was unthinkable that the workers would have the audacity to tell management how to run the company. You know, as I said, I just submitted my manuscript to a publisher on the Italian Hall tragedy, and I had to do a lot of extra research, and I researched the labor movement, and they were really true martyrs for a cause, and they used to, and one of them, or many of them, stand out. Charles Moyer and Big Bill Haley and Mother Jones. Actually, Clarence Darrow was very active in the labor movement. It was Big Bill Hayward. I always get this mix. I mix everything up, so don't take anything that I say to the grave. Big Bill Hayward was a guy in the WFM, the World Federation of Miners. Charles Moyer. And Clarence Darrow did legal work for them. Mother Jones supported them. She was, if you want to read an amazing book. Read the Mother Jones books. What she did in the coal mines in like Virginia, West Virginia, and what these guys suffered: illegal detentions, arrests, imprisonments, physically beaten and tortured. Many of them died. You know, I don't think we appreciate our forefathers or how they and the conditions there. They had kids that are working 8, 10, 12 hours a day in these child labor shops, and men working 365 days a year in these copper mines. 12 hours a day, 2 hours in the beginning. Out of those 12, 2 hours were donated, going up and down the shafts, an hour down and an hour up, back up again. They were forced to donate their time and not be paid for it. It was considered like traveling to work. But so then there was this Charles McNaughton guy, a very efficient guy, and an interesting, complex character. And he had his good points and he had his bad points. He was making $2.5 million a year, and the average worker was making $3.85 to maybe if they were lucky, based on how much weight they brought in the coal. They used to weigh them. They had a weighmaster. Maybe if they were lucky, they were making $5 a day. Now Henry Ford came up here after the strike, was always recruiting, and after the tragedy, people were so disgusted and disillusioned. Many of them went down to Detroit and worked for Ford Motor Company at $5 a day. Now, back in 1913, $5 a day was 5 times, 2.5 times, right? $5 a day, 25 times. It was that would work out today's dollars probably around 125 a day, 100 and maybe with the recent inflation. If you translate $5 a day in 1913 in today's dollars, it would probably be $125 to $150. It would be pretty rough to make it on. I mean, I guess you could do it. What would it be? 500, 755, 750 a week in today's dollars. You're not living. You're not. Most certainly not lifestyles of the rich and famous. But I don't know, for those who, they had a Christmas party. The Women's Auxiliary of the WMFM, which was the miners' union, they had a Christmas party, and on December 24th, 1913, in which at least 77 people, mostly children, stampeded and ended up suffocating in a stampede. Things were never the same after that night. It was a very bitter strike, violent strike, and there's a mass exodus after those 77 people, mostly children, ended up dying on Christmas Eve. Getting back though, I went to McNaughton's house and did a video, his stable actually, and he lived in Calumet, died around 1947. He was married and had 2 daughters. And it says here, when the Italian Hall tragedy occurred, he was devastated with the loss of life. And the person who yelled fire that created the stampede was reported to have worn a Citizens Alliance button on his lapel at the Christmas party, clearly blaming the person who caused the panic to be on the side of management and merchants. Now, it was not uncommon when a union tried to organize in the 19th century for a company to set up a supposedly grassroots, and they always had the word citizens in it, a grassroots counter movement, which was, as I say, was many times financed by the companies, supported by the companies. Uh, the printing presses might be bought or rented by the company. The paper would be uh, the paper that the newspapers were printed and were bought or supported by or were purchased by the mining companies. It was a phony front comprised mostly of so-called concerned citizens, and which were primarily businessmen who didn't want to lose the business with the mines, and clergy, politicians, sheriffs, police that were basically out. It was almost, I guess you could say at times they were probably like a vigilante sponsored group of citizens, bound and determined, along with company police. You know, the Pinkertons were famous for it. Their ultimate goal was to bust the strike. They were strike breakers. So what people suffered on both ends, you know, miners that had the fortitude to walk off the job and subsist on barely nothing with children, trying to get better wages and better conditions. And then you had the business people suffering from loss of business. Nobody, I think what I ascertained from writing this book, nobody really wins in a strike. And the longer the strike, the less people, the less they win. So I would view a strike as a last desperate act. When push comes to shove and people are backed into the corner and see no hope, see no future, then they're compelled to strike. And oddly enough, usually it's not the workers that decide whether to strike. It's the workers' wives. And it's the workers' wives who usually determine when to go back to work because they've got kids to worry about with no shoes and maybe no heat in the house, no food. So great sacrifices made by many courageous, great people. And so this guy here, Charles McNaughton, not Charles James, I'm sorry. It says Charles Moyer, the head of the Western Federation of Miners, was shot in the back in his hotel room at the Scott Hotel in Hancock when a group of angry Citizens Alliance, members arrived at his room. Moyer had blamed the tragedy on a person who wore a Citizens Alliance button. After being shot, Moyer had to be smuggled out of town on a train to Chicago, where he did recover. Both sides suffered mightily during the strike, a Pyrrhic victory at best, and after over 100 years, the scars remain still to this day in the town. The strike was settled in April 1914, but who it was that yelled fire has never been settled. James McNaughton was survived by one of his two daughters, Mary, who died shortly after her marriage, and Martha, who married Endicott Lovell. James had lost two grandsons within 6 weeks of each other fighting for another cause, that of the World War II. The surviving grandson, Robert Lovell, died in 2020 and is buried at Lakeview Cemetery with his grandparents, aunt, and brothers. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope to see you soon.